Whenever we hear someone say, wow, you haven't changed a bit. Look at you, you haven't changed a bit. That's like a compliment, right? Look at that, you haven't changed. But what if somebody came up to you and you're talking for a while, you haven't seen them in like 30, 40 years or something, and someone said, you haven't changed a bit. Emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. You know, like, well, what have you been doing for 40 years? You haven't changed a bit. You know, and it's interesting that when you look at like neuroscientists and people who study the brain and understand human behavior and things like that, what we discover is that by the time we're 35 years old, we already have a lot of emotional programming, a lot of things that are memorized in our brain, in our body, that we keep on recreating it. So in other words, we think like 60 or 70,000 thoughts a day, and 95% of those thoughts are exactly similar or the same theme as yesterday's. So we just keep on almost recreating our past. We have experiences, we draw conclusions about them, and they actually can become familiarized in the body. So when you think of someone who experiences trauma, like a car accident, right? They're broadside or something like that. Very often later on, they could be driving and anything even remotely similar comes out to that. Watch it. Huh? They have that visceral response inside of them. Where is that coming from? It's coming from a remembered emotional experience that then shows up in the body and is remembered. So what we do very often is when we wake up today, what we wind up doing is we got out of bed the same way, we got dressed, took a shower, got dressed, had a cup of coffee, drove here. We did very much the similar thing that we did the day before. So what we're going to do today, very often if we're not conscious, is we're going to create the past. We're going to create that today. So 95% of us, by the time we hit 35, are basically just unconsciously recreating the similar familiar things from the past. So you think of like the way you perceive something, the way you see something. Somewhere along the way, you have become familiarized with that perception, right? And I look out at you, and a lot of us were like, I can't believe you look at it that way. You know, like we all think things differently. We perceive things differently. And that has become familiarized and so ingrained in us that we just keep on recreating the same thing over and over and over again. Now I think about that, and I think about the gospel passage today about you can't put new wine into old wineskins. So when we have this, here's our modern day wineskins. Now this is a brand new bottle of wine. I just opened it up just to save time. Interesting, it's called The Calling. This is, Jesus gave us this bottle of wine this morning. This is the call. You're called. You're called to change. You're called to become a new wineskin. But like again, to recognize that to become a new wineskin isn't the easiest thing in the world, because we are in the habit of being ourselves, right? What's a habit? A habit is a behavior or a way of thinking that has become so familiarized, has become habituated, where we are all in the habit of being ourselves. We're doing a great job of that. But the idea is that to take a look at that habit, to take a look at the thinking and the behavior and the emotional response that comes out of that, and take a look at I keep on recreating the same thing over and over and over again. Is it possible for us to become brand new? To think in a different way, to perceive in a different way. I was thinking of asking all of you to get up and switch sides, but I don't want to inconvenience you. But I mean, it would be like that, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, I got to get up. I'm used to sitting in the back. Some of us. So when we hear this gospel passage, right? So if we have this new wine going into an old wineskin, what can often happen, here's the new wine. What is the new wine? It's the vision of Jesus. It's the perception of Jesus. It's the heart of Jesus. It's the mind of Jesus. He's trying to pour in. But what happens is, whoops, it just goes in and out. Because it's an old wineskin. It's so habituated in a particular way that when this gets poured in, it just goes in and out because it's so habituated in its way of being. I was kidding around with Greg Daly over the weekend. We were texting and stuff like that. We were talking about this, and you had a great insight. He says to me, text me, that the new wine can create the new wineskin. And I was really thinking a bit more of like, no, we have to create that new wineskin. And clearly we have to participate in that. We have to actively work on shifting and changing. But I thought that's a great idea, that the new wine actually helps the wineskin become brand new. This power of Jesus Christ. I said, that's a great idea, Greg. And then he says, another great idea is if you want to move a dresser, all you got to do is take the drawers out, put them on top of the dresser, and then you can move it. And I said, all right, let's just stick with the wineskin thing. So to become a brand new wineskin. Now, it's interesting that the word meditation means to become familiar with. So that when we're meditating and we're sitting still, the idea is you're sitting there and you're thinking about, you're observing, to be an observer. And again, that's probably a great definition of consciousness. To become conscious is, I want to be an observer of myself. I want to notice that I'm complaining and whining. I want to notice that I'm being negative or pessimistic, or I'm being grumpy, grouchy, angry, resentful. The old wineskin. How the heck is the new wine going to be poured into negativity, fear, pessimism, and resentment? We've got to become brand new. And again, there's this power inside of us that's going to help us to become that brand new wineskin. So meditation is to become familiar with. And I'll never forget one time, the first time I ever meditated, this guy says, okay, we will sit for an hour. There's like 12 people there. I'm like, no talk, no intro, no instructions. What's going on here? So I'm sitting there on my mat, and I'm looking over at this other guy. I'm going, he's meditating better than I am. Well, then again, he's probably been meditating for years. This is my first time, so of course he's going to be better than I am. But look at his posture. He's got that meditative posture. I'm too round shouldered. Yeah, that's right. I gotta get more back up like this, I'm like, I wonder how much longer this is going to last. And then all of a sudden I got it. Listen to the gobbledygook going on in my head. I'm comparing myself. I'm not as good as him. I'm making excuses. Well, he's been doing it longer than me. What the heck is going on? All of a sudden I was like, wow, I became observant. I became familiar with my line of thinking, my way of perceiving. And that became such an important insight for me. And I got, in that first few minutes, the power of meditation. To become familiar with the way I'm thinking and the way I'm perceiving. And again, try to understand that the way you think and the way you perceive is habituated. You've become habituated. You're in the habit of thinking and perceiving a particular way. So in other words, if we ask yourself, is there any possibility that you could look at things differently? Nah. Right? I mean, if I were to say to you, are you an open-minded person? What would you say? You'd want to say, well, yeah. Yeah, I'm open to new stuff. I'm open to look at things in a new way. I mean, how many of us would walk around saying, yeah, I'm a closed-minded person? Yeah. Is there anything more you could learn, anything that you could learn differently? No, I know it all. There's no point in learning anything new or looking at anything in a different way. I mean, like, I know it. And of course, the people who don't think and see the way I do, well, they're wrong, right? I mean, come on. So to become this brand new creation, did you hear the scripture passage? Do you hear what's being said? That Yahweh God is going to rise up inside of you, that you're going to run and you're not going to grow weary and you're going to soar like an eagle. You will not grow faint. You will not quit. You will not give up. You will have this power inside of you. Did you hear that? Did you hear when Bev read about anxieties and fears and giving it to your loving Father, and your loving Father knows everything you're going through? Do you hear that?
Yes.
So why do we have fear? Why do we have anxiety? Why do we have times where we want to give up? Because we are habituated in that line of thinking. Do you know that 70% of human beings live in fear and survival mode? 70%. What would it be like if we dropped that and we stepped into this possibility of looking at things in a different way? You know, when you look, it's kind of interesting, right? When you think of the world of infinite possibility, right? Would you say that's true? Like, it's like the rest of your life, what's possible for the rest of your life? Anything is possible. Is that true?
Yes.
Right? So if we live in that infinite possibility that anything is true, why do we live in this narrow thing of like that it can't be? You know, it's almost like if you went to Atlantic City and there was 300 numbers and you could bet whatever you wanted, but it just can't come up on the number 34. 300 numbers, it can't come up on 34. Basically, we're living our life of like, I don't know if I want to do it. It might come up on 34. No, there's 299 other possibilities that whatever you put down, you're going to win. But we live in that fear. Why? Because we've been conditioned, because we're habituated. Think of the things that have happened in our lives, right? We've all had things. I mean, Lord knows, I jumped in the Barnegat Bay and I almost drowned, and I got hit by a car. Somewhere along that's like included in my brain. So it could have been very easy to go like, I'm never going to go in the water again. Or I'm not going to ride a bicycle again and live in that fear, whatever it might be. This Jesus, he comes to us and says to us, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and everything is granted unto you. So many of us operate out of the external world creates my internal world. That's not what Jesus was saying. Jesus was saying your internal world creates the external world. And if you live with the strength and the power of the living God inside of you, and you operate out of that every day, can you imagine what is possible? So if you became a new wineskin with the power of the risen Lord, what's possible? Oh, that's good. Is that we would taste the beauty and the sacredness that is all around us. And it's very, very interesting that with all the scientific research, with all this understanding of our brains and neurons and things firing and things wiring and being habituated, do you know what they discover? That the power of love heals and overcomes all of that. The power of love overcomes all negativity, all habituation, all resentment. Isn't it amazing that God is communicating to us over and over again in this person of Jesus? Something so simple. Love overcomes all things. Love creates this new wineskin. So when we meditate, what we want to do is you want to imagine and picture what would your life be like if you were just totally full of love, if there was no fear. So in other words, what we want to do is let the power of love becoming a predictable future overcomes the past, the story of our past, right? So we don't want to live in the story of our past. We want to live in the possibility of this risen Christ, which gives us this power of love. Now, the end result of all of this is a human being that is so in love with being alive.